I'm Glory. I went through 4 painful years of marriage without conceiving, a stretch filled with insults, cruelty, and deep humiliation. One bitter, heartless night, my husband and his mother threw me out onto the street like I was nothing, unaware that the child they longed for was already growing inside me. I became homeless, hungry, and shattered. Carrying that pregnancy for 9 months felt like living through a nightmare I never saw coming. But listen, besties, pain isn't the end. It's the beginning of transformation. Stay close, subscribe, and witness how a woman once broken by rejection rose into redemption, turning shame into a glory no one saw coming.
The office was silent, except for the ticking clock on the wall. A thick file of divorce papers sat on the polished wooden table, untouched. The lawyer cleared his throat and slid the file forward. "Just your signature, ma'am." Her hands trembled as she stared at the papers. She lifted her eyes, searching her husband's face, but he wouldn't even look at her. He leaned back in his chair, cold eyes fixed on the floor. His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. "You made this easy for me. You failed to give me a child. What's the use of a wife who can't be a mother?" The words stabbed her heart. She bit her lips so hard it almost bled, forcing back the scream rising in her chest. She whispered, her voice shaking, "After everything I gave up for you, this is all you see?" He chuckled bitterly, not looking at her. "Don't play the victim now. Love doesn't fill a cradle. I need an heir, not excuses." Her eyes burned with tears, but she kept her head high. With trembling fingers, she picked up the pen. Every stroke of her signature felt like a nail sealing her coffin. The lawyer quietly collected the papers, but she didn't move. Instead, she reached slowly into her handbag and pulled out a small envelope. Without a word, she slid it across the table toward him. Annoyed, he frowned. "What now? A goodbye letter?" He said with sarcasm, tearing it open. The moment his eyes fell on what was inside, his smirk vanished. His hands shook. He stared, frozen, at the positive pregnancy test. For the first time, he looked at her. Her lips curved into a faint, broken smile. Tears glistened in her eyes as she whispered, "I was going to surprise you, but since you love me less now, I'll raise this child without you." The room was so silent, the ticking clock suddenly sounded deafening. She stood up, her steps steady though her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. She walked out, her tears hidden by the strength in her back. He remained seated, clutching the test, his face pale. The weight of his arrogance came crashing down on him, and for the first time in years, fear touched his eyes. Fear that he had just thrown away the only woman who truly loved him, and the child he claimed he wanted most. She pushed open the lawyer's second office door. The cold wind hit her face like a slap. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, soaking her hair and clothes, but she barely noticed. Her steps were unsteady, but she forced herself forward, each one echoing the pain in her chest. People rushed past, umbrellas shielding themselves, but she walked alone, unshielded, as if the storm outside mirrored the storm inside her. The city lights blurred through the rain, glowing like distant memories she could no longer reach. Her hands still shook, clutching the handbag that held the envelope with the pregnancy test, the one that had frozen him in shock. She remembered his smug, cruel tone. "Don't play the victim now." The words burned in her mind. She stopped under a flickering streetlight, lifting her face to the sky. Rain mixed with tears, but she didn't cry out. Instead, she whispered to herself, "I'll survive. I'll raise this child alone. You're not worth my tears." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from a friend asking if she was okay. She stared at it, then typed back slowly, "I'll be fine. Just alone for now." A car splashed through a puddle nearby, water drenching her legs. She didn't flinch. Pain had made her numb. Yet beneath the numbness, a tiny flicker of resolve glimmered, for the baby growing inside her, for herself. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, he sat in his sleek office, staring blankly at the envelope on his desk. The rain outside mirrored the storm in his mind, his life, his pride, his carefully built image, all crumbling in silence. For the first time, he felt powerless, and for the first time, he realized he had lost her forever. The rain followed her all the way to the small, cramped apartment she now called home. It wasn't much, a single room with a small bed and a tiny kitchen that barely fit a stove. The walls were thin, she could hear her neighbours arguing, TVs blaring, footsteps overhead. But it was hers, and for now that was enough. She dropped her soaked bag onto the floor and sank onto the bed. The exhaustion wasn't just from the storm outside, it was from the storm inside her heart. She was alone, truly alone. And yet, somewhere beneath the ache there was a quiet, stubborn spark, her unborn child. The first weeks were a blur of nausea, fatigue and pain she hadn't anticipated. Simple chores felt impossible, yet she forced herself to get up, to cook, to clean. Every step, every breath reminded her that she was carrying a life that had already been denied love by the father. Bills arrived in thin envelopes, each one a cruel reminder of the life she had lost. The husband who left without a backward glance, the friends and her, the dreams she once had that now seemed impossible. The apartment felt smaller by the day, suffocating, echoing with silence. At night, she lay awake, tracing her hand over her growing belly, whispering promises she hoped the child could hear. I won't let anyone hurt you. Not him. Not anyone. But she couldn't face off the reality of the cruel irony that made her stomach twist. He had left her when she needed him most, and now he would never know the warmth, the tiny kicks, the heartbeat growing stronger every day. Months rolled by and the pregnancy progressed. With each passing month, her body changed, her energy waned, and the tiny life inside her grew stronger, a life that symbolized both hope and cruel irony. She would glance at the envelope she had left on his desk, the test, and her chest would tighten with fury. He had divorced her while she carried his child, a child he claimed he wanted more than anything. Her neighbours began to notice. Some whispered behind her back, alone, pregnant. What a shame. She ignored them, but their words cut like knives. Every sneer, every sideways glance was a reminder of how cruel the world could be to a woman left to survive on her own. And through it all she grew stronger. Pain forged her resolve. Loneliness sharpened her instincts. Fear and despair became fuel for a fire no one could extinguish. By the time she looked down at her belly and felt the tiny hands pressing against her from inside, she whispered fiercely, "You're mine, and we'll survive, even if he's lost to us forever." A few weeks later, Jack sat in his luxurious office, staring blankly at the window, the city lights reflecting off the glass. For a brief moment, regret gnawed at him. Glory, his wife for 4 long years, now carrying the child he had longed for, the child he had waited for, the child that could have secured their love, their family, gone because of his pride. He clenched his fists. The thought of running after her, begging her to come back, even whispering an apology, flickered across his mind. But his pride slammed the door on it. He couldn't. He wouldn't. The office door opened, breaking his torment. His mother stepped in, walking with purpose, a smile of cunning satisfaction on her face. Behind her was a young woman, radiant, eager, flawless. "Jack," his mother said softly, but with authority, "you have just 2 years left to present a child to the Board of Trustees to secure your inheritance. According to your father's will, if you fail, the CEO position will be passed to someone else. Since you've divorced Glory properly, I think you should marry Vera legally." Jack blinked, torn between fleeting guilt and ambition. He remembered Glory's tears, the pregnancy test he had ignored, the life they had lost. But the cold, calculating part of him won out. "Her body looks fertile," his mother continued, eyes gleaming. With her, we secure our legacy." Jack exhaled slowly, his pride solidifying into resolve. He would bury his guilt and embrace this new life, as if the years with Glory had been nothing more than a rehearsal for the perfect marriage. 1 year later, the tension in the mansion was suffocating. The grand living room, usually polished and serene, now felt like a battlefield. Jack and his mother stood side by side, eyes burning with fury, while Vera trembled before them. "What have we not done for you?" his mother demanded, her voice sharp like a whip. "Luxury, comfort, attention, and the only thing we asked in return, you have denied us." Jack's face was rigid with anger, his hands clenching into fists. "Since a whole year has passed, and you still haven't given us what we need, your time in this house is over." Vera dropped to her knees, her voice cracking. "Mama, please, give me more time. I will be fertile. I'll give him children." Mama's laugh rang through the room, cruel, cold, mocking. "That's exactly what we don't have time for. My son has only 1 year remaining to prove he can run his father's empire. According to family tradition, leadership cannot be given to anyone without a child. And you failed." Vera's hands shook as she tried to reach for Jack, but he didn't move. There was no mercy in his eyes, only the calculated pride of a man who had learned to value legacy over love. Jack strode over, grabbed Vera's luggage, and threw it out the door with a hard slam. No marriage without a child. So goodbye. Jack and his mother turned to leave, their expressions hard, their heels clicking against the marble floor. The mansion was silent, except for Vera's desperate sobs echoing off the walls. But then something flickered in Jack's eyes, a memory he couldn't shake. Glory, his ex-wife, calm yet defiant, sliding that envelope across the lawyer's desk, revealing the pregnancy test he never knew about until the divorce papers are signed. The memory twisted something deep inside him, but only for a moment. "Wait," he said abruptly, his voice low and sharp. Vera and his mother froze. "When did you confirm your status last?" Jack demanded, eyes narrowing, cutting through the tension like a blade. Vera's face tight with unease. Vera stammered, I was still negative this morning. I checked again today." Jack's face darkened, his jaw tightening as rage and contempt mingled. "Get out, you infertile woman!" Vera's knees buckled. Tears streamed down her cheeks in thick, unrelenting rivers. She clutched her suitcase, dragging it behind her as she stumbled toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last, every breath a scream trapped in her chest. What will I tell my parents, my friends?" she wailed, her voice cracking under the weight of humiliation. Please give me more time. I can still..." But no one listened. Jack's eyes remained cold. His mother's lips curled in cruel satisfaction. There was no mercy in that house tonight, no second chances. Only power, legacy, and the cruel rules of a world that measured worth by fertility and obedience. Vera's sobs echoed outside as the wind whipped her hair across her face, mixing with the tears and humiliation. Her fancy clothes, her perfect appearance, now seemed like a cruel joke. Every step she took away from that house was a step into shame, loss, and heartbreak. A life reduced to nothing by people who valued legacy more than love. 1 year had passed since the divorce that nearly crushed her spirit, and Glory was no longer the same broken woman who had walked out of that lawyer's office under the pouring rain. Her small apartment, once a place of tears and silence, now radiated warmth and laughter. The sound of her baby's giggles filled the air, turning the walls into witnesses of hope. Her son, Martin's, had become her entire world. Her reason to wake up each morning, her anchor in the storm, her living proof that she had survived betrayal and cruelty. At first, life hadn't been easy. The stares, the whispers of neighbours, the gossip at work, they cut her like knives. Look at her, a single mother, abandoned. But Glory refused to bow her head anymore. She had endured enough humiliation to last a lifetime. She had faced loneliness, shame, and rejection, and she had chosen to rise above it. Now, she walked with her head high. Every sneer rolled off her shoulders. Every whisper reminded her not of shame, but of strength. She had outgrown the voices of people who thrived on her pain. Every morning was a ritual of love and determination. She woke early, bathed little Martins, and dressed him in his tiny clothes. His eyes sparkled like stars when he smiled at her. She would press a kiss to his forehead and whisper, "You're my miracle, my pride, my victory." Then, with a firm resolve, she dropped him at the daycare before heading to work. Glory had dusted off her old dreams and found her way back to her career path. Where once she had abandoned her ambitions for Jack's ego, now she worked tirelessly, climbing step by step, reclaiming her identity and building a future not just for herself, but for her son. At work, colleagues who once pitied her now admired her. She wasn't just the woman left by her husband. She was the resilient single mother who worked hard, smiled through the struggles, and carried herself with grace. Opportunities began to open. Doors that had once been locked now creaked wide for her determination. Every paycheck, every promotion, every late night spent balancing files while rocking Martins to sleep was a victory. The whispers of neighbours became meaningless, drowned out by the joyful sound of her son calling, "Mama! Mama!" At night, she often sat by the window with Martins asleep in her arms. The city lights blinked outside, but she no longer felt small against their glow. She whispered to him, "You're enough for me, Martins. You are all the love I will ever need, and one day, when you are grown, you will know that we conquered the world together." Her heart, once shattered, was now healed by the innocent laughter of her child. The scars of past became fuel, the betrayal of her husband became her testimony, and the life she once thought ended had only just begun. Glory was no longer broken, she was reborn, stronger, wiser, and with Martins by her side, she had found a joy deeper than anything Jack or his mother could ever understand. One fateful day, the sun was already setting when Glory walked into the daycare compound, exhausted from work but relieved at the thought of holding Martins in her arms. The sound of children's laughter filled the air, their tiny shoes thudding against the tiled floor as parents came and left with their little ones. Glory smiled faintly, her mind already softening with joy. But then she froze. By the entrance gate, leaning against his sleek black car, stood Jack. His tall frame was unmistakable, his sharp suit too polished to be mistaken for any other man. His eyes, those cold, familiar eyes, were fixed only on her. Glory's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly composed herself, tightening her handbag strap and walking straight past him as if he were invisible. Her only goal: get Martins, leave, breathe. Minutes later, Glory scooped Martins into her arms, inhaling his baby scent as if to shield herself with him. But just as she stepped out of the compound, a strong voice cut through the air. "Glory!" She stopped. The voice carried authority, bitterness, and something else she couldn't decipher. Turning slowly, she found Jack standing directly in her path, his expression unreadable, his presence dominating the moment. "Good to see you again," he said quietly, though his eyes burned with something far from peace. "I have come to take my son home." The words hit Glory like a thunderbolt. She tightened her grip on Martins, who looked up at the strange man curiously. Her voice shook, but her anger steadied it. "Your son?" she snapped. "The same son you denied the moment you tore our marriage apart? The same child you ignored me for carrying? You have no son here, Jack. You made your choice. You never ran after me. You never checked on me. In fact, your life continues as if nothing happens." Parents nearby slowed their steps, sensing the storm brewing. The daycare staff peeped from the window, whispering nervously. Jack's jaw clenched, but he forced a smirk. "Don't test me, Glory. That boy carries my blood, whether you like it or not. I gave you time, I gave you freedom, but now I've come for what belongs to me." "Belongs to you?" Glory's voice rose, trembling with fury. "Children are not property, Jack. You didn't suffer the sleepless nights, the tears, the rejection, the hunger I endured while carrying him. You weren't there when I almost gave up, when the world mocked me. Don't you dare show up now and talk about rights." Jack took a step closer, his tone turning icy. "You have 7 days, Glory. 7 days to bring Martins to me. If you refuse," his voice dropped into a deadly whisper, "I'll see you in court. And trust me, the law will favour me. I am still his father, and I will not walk away again." Glory's lips quivered, but her fire didn't die. "Then let the court see the kind of man you are. You may have wealth and power, Jack, but you will never have Martin's heart. He is mine. He has always been mine." For a long moment, the air thickened with silence. Only the sound of Martin's innocent giggle broke it as he tugged at his mother's hair, too young to understand the war being declared over his tiny life. Jack straightened, his pride wounded but his determination blazing. 7 days, he repeated firmly, then turned, entered his car and drove off, leaving the smell of expensive cologne and the echo of his threats hanging heavy in the air. Glory stood frozen, clutching Martins as if the world might snatch him away at any second. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. But one thing was clear. The battle for Martins had just begun. Later, the courtroom was packed. Curious neighbours, reporters, and even colleagues who once whispered behind Glory's back filled the seats. To them, it wasn't just a custody battle. It was a scandal. A show, a war. Jack entered, suit sharp, pride taller than the courthouse pillars, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they were ready to swallow Glory alive. He smirked when he saw her sitting alone, no legal representation by her side, just a simple folder in her hand. "She didn't even get a lawyer," he whispered to his counsel, sneering. "This will be quick." But Glory sat calm, spine straight, eyes unshaken. When the judge finally called the case, Jack's lawyer went first. They painted him as the responsible father who was wrongly deprived of his son by a bitter ex. They flaunted his wealth, his ability to provide, his so-called sacrifices. Jack nodded along like a king about to reclaim his throne. Then it was Glory's turn. She rose slowly, turned to the judge, and said in a voice that carried across the room, "My lord, I have only one request. If this man, who claims to be the father of my child, can answer these questions correctly, I will hand over my son this very moment and walk away without looking back." The courtroom stirred. Even the judge raised a brow. "Proceed." Glory turned to Jack, her eyes sharp like blades. "What's the exact date of your son's birth?" Jack shifted in his seat. January. No, February. The 15th. Or 16th. Murmurs broke out. "Where exactly was I when I gave birth? Hospital name, ward and city." Silence. Jack's lips trembled. "Somewhere in Lagos. I don't recall the hospital's name." Laughter erupted from the back of the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel. "What time of the day did I give birth? Morning, afternoon, or night?" "Evening," Jack blurted. Glory's lips curled. "Wrong. It was at dawn, 4:23 a.m. "Who cut the baby's umbilical cord?" Jack swallowed hard. "The doctor?" Glory shook her head. "The midwife, a woman named Clara. I gave birth in her small health centre. She prayed for me while she did it." "What was the child's birth weight?" Jack blinked. "About 5 kilograms?" 3.1, Glory snapped. "You don't even know if your son came tiny or large. What was the child's first cry like, loud or faint?" "Loud," Jack guessed. Glory chuckled bitterly. "Faint. So faint I thought he wouldn't survive." The audience shifted uneasily. Jack's lawyers exchanged nervous glances. "What exact date was the naming ceremony, and what did you contribute?" Jack stammered. I wasn't told the date." Glory's voice hardened. "It was March 6th. You didn't even send a pin, not even a phone call." "What is the name of the doctor that vaccinated the child for the first time?" "Dr. Amika?" Jack guessed desperately. Glory slammed her hand on the desk. "Dr. Rachel Ajayi, a woman! She held Martins like he was her own. But you wouldn't know that, would you? Which hospital was the child first admitted to, and for what sickness?" "I don't." Jack's voice cracked. "St. Luke's Hospital. Severe pneumonia." I almost lost him. Glory's voice broke for the first time. The courtroom went still. What was the child's very first word? Jack tried to laugh. Mama? Glory's eyes blazed. It was ball, not mama, not papa, a toy, because I was the only one there to play with him. Who was present when the child took his first step? Jack went blank. Glory's lips trembled, but she spoke with fire. I was. I was the one clapping, crying, screaming. You, nowhere near. What food did the child first eat apart from breast milk? Jack looked helpless. Pap. Mashed banana, Glory said coldly, and he spat it all over my face, and I laughed until Can you recite the child's school name? Jack scratched his head. Sunrise? Academy? Glory's sarcasm dripped like venom. Wrong. Bright Steps Montessori. Even Google won't save you. What is the child's favourite bedtime story or lullaby? Jack was silent. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. I sang it until I lost my voice some nights, Glory whispered. When the child cries at night, what's the trick I use to calm him? Jack frowned. A bottle of milk? Glory's voice cut sharp. No, I carry him on my back and hum until he sleeps. A trick you never cared to know. How many teeth does he have? Jack hesitated. 6. Glory smirked. 3. He's growing, even without your notice. What is the child's favourite food right now, and how is it cooked? Jack's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him down. Jack whispered, rice. Glory's laugh was bitter. Beans porridge with fried plantain, soft, spiced and mashed because he loves the sweetness, but you wouldn't know how to cook or serve it. What brand or colour is the child's favourite toy? Jack threw his hands up. How am I supposed to know toys? Glory's glare pierced him. A blue teddy bear named Bruno. He sleeps with it every night. When was the last time the child fell sick, and what medicine was prescribed? Jack froze, face pale. Glory leaned in, voice low and sharp. 3 weeks ago. Malaria. Caught him, and I spent the night awake by his side, cooling his fever. By now, the courtroom was dead silent. Jack's arrogance had crumbled. His lawyers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his eyes. Finally, Glory straightened. So, my lord, you've heard. A man who doesn't know when his child was born, who never cut the cord, who doesn't know his son's first word, first food, or first fever. Should that man be called a father? Parenthood isn't about claiming a child when convenient. It's about showing up when it matters. The judge's gavel thundered. Jack's face burned red with shame. The courtroom had been tense, but the silence that followed Glory's questions was deafening. Jack's lips trembled, his mother's face turned pale, and the gallery whispered with gasps and muffled laughter. He couldn't answer even the simplest one. Not the birth date, not the naming ceremony, not the first cry of the boy he claimed so boldly in court. When the judge finally dismissed the case, stating that fatherhood is more than blood, it is presence, sacrifice and proof, Glory gathered Martins into her arms. She didn't look back once as she walked out of the courtroom, her heels striking the floor like a victorious drumbeat. But humiliation doesn't end at the gavel's strike. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones were pushed toward Jack. Flashes from cameras blinded him, and voices cut into his already bruised pride. Mr. Jack, how do you expect to raise a child when you don't even know his birth date? Sir, are you aware the public is calling you the absent father of the year? Madam, as his mother, how could you stand here and support a man who abandoned his pregnant wife? Jack's mother tried to silence them, snapping at the crowd. You all don't know the full story. But the public did not care. Her expensive wrapper, her forced dignity, and her trembling hands became the perfect target. One by one, women in the crowd jeered. Shame on you, madam. A mother who couldn't raise her son to be a father. You pampered him until he became a coward. Is this the legacy you're proud of? Jack clenched his fists, his face burning red. He tried to push through, but a group of men blocked his path, laughing bitterly. You thought fatherhood was a title? It's a responsibility, brother. The humiliation grew thicker, heavier. His name began trending before he even reached his car. Jack the stranger father. Meanwhile, Glory stood a few steps away, her child resting on her shoulder. She didn't say a word, didn't gloat, didn't even smirk. Her silence was her greatest weapon. It spoke louder than any insult. She simply adjusted Martin's jacket and whispered softly, "Let's go home, my love. You've got all you need right here." And with that, she walked past the flashing cameras, her dignity intact, while Jack and his mother drowned in the bitter taste of public disgrace. That same evening, the humiliation of the day was still burning like fire when Jack's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was one of the board of directors from his late father's company. With trembling fingers, he picked up. "Jack," the voice said coldly, "you have exactly 2 weeks to present us with your child. If not, you'll lose your seat on the board and return as just another employee in the company your father built." The line went dead before Jack could even respond. He sat frozen on the sofa, staring into space. His mother, who had been pacing restlessly, demanded, "Who was that?" Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. "It was the board. They've given me 2 weeks. If I don't prove Martins is my son, I lose everything." The words struck his mother like a thunderclap. She stumbled backward into the chair, clutching her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes and flowed freely down her cheeks. "Jack," her voice cracked, trembling with regret, "you never told me that Glory was pregnant for you. My God, I stood in that court today, so ashamed of myself." Her hands trembled as she wiped her tears, but they only came heavier. She whispered, almost like a confession, "That girl, Glory, she is the only chance we have left. Without her and that child, you will lose everything. Your father's name, the company, our dignity." The room fell into heavy silence. Jack sat, fists clenched, pride battling with fear. His mother's sobs filled the air, and for the first time, the weight of his carelessness pressed down on him. After what felt like forever, his mother straightened her back. Her swollen eyes hardened with determination. "Jack," she said, voice low but firm, "we have only one more chance." Jack raised his eyes slowly. "What chance?" His mother leaned closer, her tears mixing with bitterness. "To get that child back into this house, we need to go on our knees." Jack's jaw tightened, his pride wounded, but desperation was already creeping in. He knew his mother was right. 2 days after, it was a quiet Saturday morning. Glory was outside her small compound, bending over a basin as she rinsed Martin's tiny clothes, the scent of soap filling the air. She hummed softly, her face glowing with peace, until the sudden sound of footsteps made her pause. Her heart skipped. She looked up and froze. Jack and his mother were standing at her gate. For a moment, time stopped, memories of humiliation and rejection flooding back. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to stand tall. She wasn't that broken woman anymore. Without hesitation, Jack and his mother stepped into the compound, and to her shock, both of them dropped to their knees. The gravel of the compound and digging painfully into their skin, but Glory stood tall, her wet hands dripping soapy water, her face set like stone. "Glory," Jack's mother whispered, her voice trembling, "please, we didn't know better, but now I see that my son's life is tied to yours. Without your forgiveness, everything we have will vanish." Glory bent slightly, staring at the woman who once called her barren, useless, and unworthy. "Mama, when I begged you that day not to send me out into the streets under the rain without you knowing that I am already pregnant, what did you say? You spat on me and said, 'A tree that does not bear fruit should be cut down.' You thought you were clever, didn't you?" Her lips curved into a sharp smile. "But look at me now. Tell me, Mama, do I look like a barren woman?" "After I left your son's house that day, I started feeling feverish. I thought it was due to stress. I ignored it. Then a week later, your son sent me the lawyer's invitation to sign divorce letters. I went to the hospital to treat malaria, but instead of malaria, I was told I am already 3 weeks pregnant." Jack's mother lowered her head, shame thick in her throat. Jack reached for Glory's feet, his voice cracking. Glory, I know I don't deserve even a glance from you, but please, think of the child. He's my blood too. Don't punish him because of my stupidity. Give me one more chance. Glory stepped back quickly, yanking her leg away as though his touch was poison. Your blood? She scoffed bitterly. Which blood? The blood that denied his mother the care needed, the blood that treated him like a mistake, or the blood that never knew about his kicks? Tell me, Jack, which blood? The neighbours had started gathering, peeking over fences and doorways. Whispers spread like wildfire. Jack and his mother kneeling in Glory's compound? It was the kind of humiliation that no wealth or inheritance could erase. Jack's mother began to weep loudly, clutching the edge of Glory's wrapper. Please, Glory, the board has given us 2 weeks. If Jack doesn't present a child, everything his father built will be stripped from us. I know we treated you like dirt, but you are the only rope left to pull us from the pit. If not for me, then for the legacy of my late husband. Don't let his name be disgraced. Don't let us crawl in shame. Glory burst out laughing, loud, sharp and cold. The sound echoed around the compound. Ah, so this is what has brought the mighty to their knees? Inheritance? Legacy? She shook her head slowly. Not love, not remorse, not even genuine repentance. Just property, wealth, status. Mama, you're still the same. Jack's eyes were bloodshot. He tried again, his voice breaking. Glory, please, if not for me, then for our son. Let him grow knowing his father. Wunni, let him have my name. Glory's voice rose suddenly, fierce and unshakable. Your name? The same name that threw me into the streets like a dog? The same name that called me barren before God and man? Keep your name, Jack. My son will never wear your shame like a badge. The neighbours gasped. Someone muttered, She's right. That boy is hers alone. Another said, Imagine the humiliation, kneeling after everything they did to her. Jack's mother, desperate, banged her forehead on the ground. Glory, if you reject us now, you're not only punishing us, you're punishing the memory of my husband. Please. Glory dropped the wet cloth back into the bucket and wiped her hands slowly on her wrapper. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of pain and power. Mama, let me tell you something you never thought you'd hear. You need me, but I don't need you. You need my son, but he doesn't need you either. And if the memory of your husband depends on me, then it means he left nothing solid behind. She turned toward her door and began walking away. Then she stopped, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. You called me barren, now I call you empty. The compound fell into silence. Jack and his mother stayed kneeling, broken and disgraced, as Glory disappeared into her small apartment with the weight of victory burning like fire in her steps. 4 days later, Glory was buried in work at her office, flipping through files and typing reports when the door creaked open. Her receptionist walked in with an unusual smile. Ma'am, your attention is needed downstairs, please. Glory raised a brow. Downstairs? At this hour? She hesitated for a moment, then stood up and followed. As she descended the stairs, the faint sound of soft music reached her ears. Her steps slowed. Something didn't feel ordinary. When she finally stepped into the lobby, her eyes widened. There was a mini crowd waiting for her. 4 birthday cakes sat beautifully on a decorated table with balloons and ribbons hanging across the walls. The air smelled of vanilla and roses. Happy birthday, Glory! Her colleagues chorused, joined by unfamiliar but cheerful faces. Glory gasped, instantly covering her mouth with both hands. Her heart skipped, her eyes watered. This was the very first time in her life she had been completely taken unawares. She had never experienced a celebration like this, never had anyone cared enough to plan such a surprise. Her lips trembled, emotions rushing in waves. Oh my God, she whispered under her breath, trying to steady herself. And just then, the crowd parted. Walking in slowly, hand in hand, were Jack and his mother. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Glory froze in place, her heartbeat hammering against her ribs. Jack's mother wore a calm but hopeful smile. while Jack himself held a diamond ring in one hand and a single red rose in the other. Every step he took towards her felt like eternity, and when he finally reached her, he went down on one knee. His mother, with tears in her eyes, also knelt beside him. Glory's chest rose and fell heavily. She couldn't breathe. Her past flashed before her. Every tear, every heartbreak, every humiliation. Jack's voice trembled, but his words were clear. "Glory, the first time you gave me your heart, I toyed with it. I was blind, foolish, and unworthy of the love you offered me. But today," he lifted the rose towards her, "I stand before you a changed man. Please, marry me. Allow me to make amends, to heal every scar I gave you, and to treat you like the queen you've always been." His mother placed a trembling hand on her chest and nodded earnestly. "My daughter, happy birthday. Please, let this birthday be more than just a celebration of your life. Let it also be the rebirth of love, of forgiveness, of family. I beg you, accept us back. We are deeply sorry for every moment we made you cry. From today, we promise only to honor you." The room was silent except for the soft background music. Every eye was fixed on Glory. Her hands shook, her throat tightened, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Jack, still kneeling, reached forward, his eyes glistening with sincerity. "I can't change the past, Glory, but I swear with everything in me I will protect your heart for the rest of my life. Please, say yes." The silence grew heavier. Her colleagues sniffled quietly, some already tearing up. Glory pressed a hand against her chest, staring at the man who once broke her, now kneeling in front of the entire world with nothing but humility and love in his eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Jack!" The weight of years of pain and longing trembled in that single word. Tears streamed down her cheeks uncontrollably, blurring her vision as she looked at the man who once shattered her heart, but now knelt before her, trembling with regret. The crowd, already holding their breath in suspense, began to cheer louder, their voices echoing through the hall. "Glory, say yes! Glory, say yes! Glory, say yes!" Her hands shook as she covered her mouth again, her heart beat fast, torn between the scars of the past and the light of a new future knocking at her door. Jack's eyes glistened with tears, his hand still stretched out with the diamond ring and rose. His mother, still on her knees, clasped her palms together, pleading silently. Glory swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Yes, Jack, yes! Though I am broken, I will give you another chance." The hall erupted in celebration. People screamed with joy. Some jumped up and clapped. Others rushed forward with their phones to capture the beautiful moment. "Congratulations!" they chorused, their voices rising above the music, the laughter and the tears. Jack slipped the ring gently onto her trembling finger and rose to his feet, pulling her into his arms. Glory melted into his embrace, sobbing into his chest as the crowd clapped and cheered. For the first time in years, she felt her heart find rest. 1 week later, the bells rang joyfully as Glory, dressed in a radiant white gown, walked down the aisle with grace. The church was filled with family, friends and colleagues who had watched their story unfold. Jack's eyes never left her as he whispered over and over, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you for bringing her back to me." The vows were exchanged with trembling voices and heartfelt promises. This time, Jack swore not just with his lips, but with his soul, never to hurt her again, never to let pride destroy their love. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Jack kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to nearly every eye in the room. The applause shook the hall. Together they laughed, cried, and embraced as one family. From that day forward, Glory was treated with utmost honor and respect. No longer the forgotten woman, no longer the broken heart. She became the queen of Jack's life, the pride of his mother, and the mother of Martin's. Their home blossomed with peace, joy, and love, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal and the greatest pain could turn into a testimony of redemption. And so, with hands clasped together and hearts beating as one, they lived happily ever after. Hello, beloved viewers. What a journey this has been, from heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation, to forgiveness, love, and restoration. Glory's story teaches us that even in the ashes of pain, love can be reborn if the heart chooses grace over bitterness. But let me ask you, besties, if you were in Glory's shoes, would you have forgiven Jack and his mother, or would you have walked away forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to read them all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Till next time, stay blessed and stay loved.